I'm Kanisha Grayson. I'm founder and CEO of The Art of Applying. The Art of Applying helps people from all over the world get into the world's best grad schools and get money to pay for it. Today, we are speaking with our awesome client, HB, to hear his story, his advice, and his encouragement for all of you. Hi, HB.
Hi, Kanisha. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so happy that you are here. What time is it? You're in Abu Dhabi. What time is it for you?
It's 8:15 in the evening.
Okay, so it's not like too late. I won't keep you too long. Okay, awesome. So tell everybody what we are celebrating today.
Well, we're celebrating I'd rather say it's the process of celebration because I'm yet to hold all the flags. I got through a couple of schools. I applied to 3 and I got to 2, which is like a success rate of about 66%. Columbia EPM at CEPA, which is the Economics Policy Management 1-year executive program, is what I've got through. I've also made it to John Hopkins SICE, again in the 1-year MIP program, rather MIPP. Yeah, I was pretty thrilled. It was a lot of hard work, and thanks to you and your team, it became easier to reach my goals.
Awesome. I am also thrilled. Wonderful. And I know everybody out there is probably going crazy like, well, what was the third school? So if you feel comfortable sharing the third school, you can, but if you'd rather not say, you don't need to.
Sure. I mean, my third school was actually the second on my list in terms of my preferences. So Columbia was the first one. The second one, which I still feel I don't know why I couldn't get through, was Berkeley Goldman. Again, the MPA program. And I mean, due diligence after my rejection helped me, connect with a few people in the adcoms, get a few tips in terms of what I could have done better. And it was just perhaps there were too many of my kind applying that year. So it was just the diversity which became a question, apparently. And I thought it's all right. I think it's all in the right spirit. And
that's right.
I've still made it to my number 1 choice, which
that's exactly, and that's what matters most. So
absolutely,
so yes. Awesome. Okay, so HB, talk to us about how you found The Art of Applying and what made you choose to work with us versus another company or versus doing it on your own.
Right. So I think the process was, I think it was back in August. I was quite keen to do my next master's, and I'd already done one before in applied finance, and I was quite keen to accelerate my career in my field, which is public sector strategy, policy making. That's what I've been doing for the past at least 8 months. 8 years rather. And I was keen, and I was in the process of doing my secondary research, trying to reach out to admission consultants. Believe it or not, Art of Applying was the first one I came across as a link. So we rather give credit to Google to have it pretty much as the first hit. And I got in touch with your team members. I spoke to them, and I think my decision making was less than 6 hours, honestly. I never went out shopping in the market trying to find out who the second or the third consultant could mean. There was enough references online, which was to state claim that it was pretty much the best I could, engage with. So it was a no-brainer for me. And so yeah, I mean, it was pretty seamless, the whole process, if I can sum it up.
Fantastic. And what made you decide to work with us besides trying to do it on your own?
Well, I think I'm a management consultant, so I write reports and I prepare, how do I say, opportunities in a very, I can prepare a spin around it and make it very sellable. So that's the easy bit. However, I think always, me being a consultant myself, I wanted advice on how to make it not just an application, but a winning application. So in this regard, any external advice in terms of how I could best position it, whether it could be just a couple of sentences, whether it could be the whole repositioning of the essay, it could, or positioning my resume or my CV as such. Those were the kind of things that I was quite keen to, learn for. And I think again the process was it's a process of self-discovery because it involves a lot of reflection. Whilst the reflection and the first cut and the first drafts and getting the whole package together was my creation, but eventually, fine-tuning it and making it sure that when I'm competing at a global level across continents and applicants from various backgrounds, different academic disciplines, different, economic backgrounds in terms of countries which they come from, whether it's an emerging nation or developed nation. I wanted to stand out so that at least I can join them in that classroom. And I think as the whole, it was a great driver to the whole process. I think Art of Applying really helped me in that.
Wonderful. I am delighted to hear that. And I would love for you to share anything about your personal or professional story and why you wanted to go to a top policy school.
Well, I think I've been. I think I have seen it a lot across geographies. I started my career after my undergraduation in India. I got into investment banking. I spent a few years in Hong Kong, and this was in the good old days of banking when things were rosy. But I happened to work in a not so impressive thing, and I was part of the whole CDO, MBAs team things. So I was in a rating agency, and we rated a few products, perhaps incorrectly, and which led to the whole crisis, partly because of.
So you were the man responsible.
I was pretty much the architect of it. So I think that was so after 3 years of a lot of long hours at 22, when you're 22 or 23, when you're suddenly out of a job because there's global retrenchment happening. It's an opportunity to reflect and find, how do I say, a plan B to your career. And my ego was pretty much squashed at that stage, and I said no more investment banking. So I took a break. In 6 months, I decided to get back to professional services. Consulting was the area which I chose. So I joined a strategy house in Singapore, spent about 2 years working in public sector, got used to making PowerPoint slides because never made them before. I was an Excel guy. So after that, I went to another firm, a competitor in China. I was in Shanghai for about 3 years. Then I moved to Middle East with another firm, spent about 3 years, went back to Singapore to do my own startup in fintech. But I think financial services just doesn't go very well with me. It was an interesting model because I wanted to keep my learnings from public sector and try to build up something around SMEs, which is the small and medium enterprises. That's something which I'm very passionate about, and that's going to be my area of specialization going forward also, whether it's school, etc. Policies around how to make small businesses much more effective, how governments are moving towards non-oil revenues in the Middle East, for example, or improving the informal sector or the shadow economy in emerging and frontier nations. So I wanted to set up my own fintech where I could make these wealthy investors meet such small and medium enterprises. So I wanted to set up my own platform. Things didn't work out, and in 1 year I burned a lot of money and my fingers, and I said, okay, I'm going back. During this time, I also completed my master's, which was in applied finance from Singapore, from National University of Singapore. And then I said, I'm in a bit of a debt, and I want to restart where I left. So I came back and to the same firm, and I've been doing good work for the past 1.5 years. And during this process, it was very clear that there was this. We still work with a lot of policy advisors. We work with the governments on a lot of policy issues, environment, economics, labor laws, so and so, telecoms. I work a lot with regulators, but at the same time, I always had this burning desire that I can't be a policy maker. I can't draft policy papers. I always rely on my external, how do I say, other team members to do it. I might know a lot of things, but there was a knowledge gap which I had, and which was always pushing me to that direction that maybe practical learning would be helpful. And a rigorous program would help me train, complete or bridge this gap which I have, so that I can come back as a stronger consultant. but this was no reflection of my abilities. I was still doing great, but it was always that small gap which I wanted to fix. So back in so last year, I think around January, I decided that it's an opportunity for me to dive into the process. Retook my GMAT, my GRE, also gave my TOEFL. I just wanted to be prepared before engaging with with advisor like yourself, and September onwards, I think, Art of Applying, we got together, and since then we started writing a lot of essays and sending the applications.
That's right. That's right. So yes, let's lead right into the experience of working with us. What did you hope the Art of Applying would help you with, and what actually happened?
Right. So I think from the onset, my expectations were clear. I had researched enough to understand how an admission consulting organization works. So it was very clear that there's a lot of hand-holding, there's a lot of guidance, there's a lot of strategic advice which can help shape a winning application. So with these expectations, I got into the agreement, and we started working. Now, about 7 months into the process and reflecting back, I think, and that's exactly what I wrote in my Facebook post also, that it was game, set, match, as they say in tennis, right? So, I mean, that's exactly what I expected. That's exactly what I was able to take from the Art of Applying, and it showed in my results. So I think couple of things which always are very important for any aspiring candidate who's looking at finding advisors, admissions on the admissions side, is a lot of grunt work, a lot of hard work comes in actually from the applicant. So one should be ready patiently to go through the drafts, get in first of all the ideas, get clarity of thought, and go through the drafts. And then secondly, so that patience level is very important. The second point is that the waiting game, again, it's extremely important in the whole process. Again, a different level of patience. But the waiting game here means, what if your first school, the chronological order was such that the first application I heard back was a rejection. And I was like, I just interviewed and I did very well. And what could have gone wrong? So again, you get into this state of, reflection. The world is not very nice to me. What is the meaning of life? And, we come up with all these philosophical questions. And then you get back to the grind and you start hoping that, okay, we still have 2 top schools left, and things happen, right? So in a month's time from then, exactly in 30 days, I received my first acceptance. And within 5 hours from them, I received the second acceptance. So it was a moment for champagne and a lot of tears,
Oh, I love champagne and tears.
Right. It was incredible. And I think patience is very important in the whole process, because there's only so much which an applicant can do himself or herself, after which you have to really believe into the process of admissions committees, and also, more importantly, accept competition, because sometimes competition is many a times better than you. And I think all these learnings, were again, very clear in my mind, and here we are today.
Beautiful. So you talked about competition. One thing that we have at the Art of Applying that, as far as I know, no other admissions consulting company has, is community. And you were a pretty active person in the Art of Applying online community of our clients. So I would love for you to just tell everyone who's watching this, what is our client community? How was it helpful to you?
Right. Good question. I think 2 instances, or rather 2 channels of engagement which I can think of are, first of all, there were, help me recall, are these fortnightly or monthly calls?
Yeah, they were monthly all
calls.
clients together.
Right. So that was a great opportunity to dive into and listen to, of course, questions which other candidates, other peers are pitching in, and it was always helpful because indirectly you get a lot of your questions answered. It's a great platform, if you will. And at the same time, it's an opportunity for you to, get the answers to the questions which you feel are important. So that was great. The second is, of course, between calls, I think there was an opportunity for me to engage directly with my consultant, whether through calls and the portal, if I can use that word.
Yeah, portal. Yeah.
Art of Applying. I think it's very seamless. It's pretty simple and the user friendly, if you will. So I think these were some of the immediate things which come to my mind. And apart from that, I think the Facebook page was always helpful because, again, there are a lot of insights and advice and learnings which you get. Even at sometimes you get the boost when you see another fellow applicant making it to a top school, and you feel like, yes, I can do it one day. So I think the whole ecosystem around which you've been able to create is helpful in many ways. So I think overall it's been a great experience to be engaging.
I'm so happy to hear that. I'm so happy to hear that. So HB, one of the things that we often run into is our Indian male clients being like, there are so many guys from South Asian guys applying. I don't know, should I even try? And what's your record? And can you really help me? And I would just like you to speak to international students, Indian males, people who might be watching this video and see a little bit of themselves in you, but also they're having doubt and fear.
Well, I never knew any statistics to start with, so I went in the way I was. The only thing which was really, which I was pretty confident was that I had a strong background, whether it was professional, academics, etc. So in my mind, it was clear that with my conviction, if I am able to position myself, I'll be in. So it's a bit of self-belief. I personally feel demographic profiles or this slicing and dicing of information, creating pools and then saying, okay, X percentage goes to, for example, the Chinese students, the Indian students, the Koreans, and then the maybe a bit of quota for the Middle East, North Africa, etc. I think these are all statistics at the end. It just depends on how well you're able to write that application. And I still remember many years back when I gave one of my first attempts for for GMAT, there was this admission blog, and it used to give an online free community, and it used to give all these interesting, crazy statistics. Okay, you were in this admission pool, and from this pool, which is a geographic cluster, only X percentage would emerge. And I used to always think, maybe it's a myth. One should just get over it, because the minute you get embroiled into all these statistics, etc., what can happen is that you may never be yourself while writing the applications. And I'm pretty sure the admissions committee is so clever. I wish I get that job one day when I'm a little more seasoned, that they see through the application into the person without even sometimes speaking to that person, because it's the first round of filtrations. But I think if an individual from whatever country, rather, he or she comes, if you have the building blocks, which is whatever you've achieved in your graduation, undergraduation, if it's not been the best, push for a competitive examination, a test, if you will, give it your best shot, and then reflect on whatever you've achieved professionally to package it with the help of a great consultant like yourself. It becomes clearly a winning story. The only one thing which I did do, and I went really out of my way, was I visited the school. So I made an earnest attempt to fly to Berkeley. I went to Johns Hopkins, and I got onto a couple of 2, 3, 4, 5 calls with people from Columbia, not just the admissions deans, but also students. I wanted to really get into the system, to understand, get any of those minor tips, buzzwords, or, every school has a culture, and it's important that that culture gets somehow reflected in your application. Otherwise, it's pretty much a cookie cutter application sometimes, right? is the programs are very similar, but it's the culture of the school and the whole vibe around the badge and buzzwords and philosophies, right? If I can use that word, it was very important to capture. So I made that investment. So I did a road trip, and not a road trip, but I did a road show, if you will, to all these schools. And I wanted to engage as much as I can. Being in a different continent, it was very difficult for me to go back and forth. So that's something which is I always regret. I wish I was in the US. I could have visited more of such events. But, it was an attempt which I wanted to make. I wanted to leave the correct impression and make that investment, because somehow later, it does come back to pay for you. So these were some of the additional steps which I made. But eventually, otherwise, it was just being, confident and true to yourself when you're writing the application. Again, I think the more I reflect on my applications, I think it was almost 99% accurate. The 1% could be, somehow, but whatever I've expressed and written was reflection of my career and my past and what I wish to do in future.
Mm-hmm. So it wasn't about trying to shape you into someone you're not. It's more about highlighting the best of you.
Pretty much. I think, I work with a few colleagues who one colleague's from Chile and the other colleague is from Germany, and all three of us were applying to schools. All three come from different continents to start with, different backgrounds, different, but one thing which was pretty similar between us three was the other two ladies. We had pretty much a standard approach in terms of reflecting back and writing, so which again proves to show that demographics per se are meaningless until you're able to really create a niche for yourself in that application, so that the application pool really, you stand out in some way or the other. I'm sure the admissions committee is always looking for the standout applicants, irrespective of what their background or what their ethnicity is.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so HB, what's going to change in your life and career now that you're headed off to, I believe Columbia is where you're going to go. That's your first choice. What's going to change about the possibilities and opportunities for you?
Well, I think that's always a tough question to answer, because one goes to school to learn, first of all to unlearn and then learn. It is like a rewriting process, as I say in mechanical engineering. So you rewire and you develop a network. So I'm quite passionate to in terms of what I've been doing in the past. So I'll stick to my discipline, which is consulting and strategy. The only thing is that it might switch in terms of my next choice of employers. It might be more towards working for multilateral organizations like the World Bank or the IMF. But again, it's too early for me to comment. Especially, I've lived and worked in so many countries that it does not really matter where I will be based. So I'm not one of those who would go to a particular school thinking, oh, you know what, this is a job placement organization, I'm going to get a job after this. So my goal is to really, fix my learning deficit, if I can use that word, get the skills in place and stick to my discipline. So it's going to be most probably consulting. But again, the nature of the employer might just change from a for-profit to a not-for-profit, if you will.
Wonderful. Wow, this has been really wonderful. Is there anything else you would like to share with all the people out there lurking, Googling, hanging out on forums, watching this video, trying to find your last name so they can or a phone call? What do you want to say to that person out there who's feeling alone, who has a dream and just doesn't know what to do next?
Well, it just depends as to, first of all, I know some people who, and I've seen a live case, and I'm sure you know of it, that a person went applying to an MPA program and an MBA program both. And to me, both are very different disciplines, but sometimes, people apply. And so it's very important for an individual to know what my career path is and where my heart lies. Two very, very different disciplines. And once that person knows what track he or she has to pick up, I think it's about just exploring and understanding what schools you wish to apply to, getting a high-level sense of where you belong. I was pretty attached to the school in my mind, which I got rejected. So that was also a big, how do I say, my disappointment levels were amplified because of that. Because I could see myself sitting in that classroom because I attended a class. I interacted with students and I said, man, I'm gonna really blossom here, right? But again, when I reflect back and I say, okay, you know what, there was a reason why it didn't happen. So let's live with that. I'm going to a better school, perhaps in terms of rankings at least. And I think it's very important that you do your research. You identify what schools you wish to go to, and make that effort of knowing the schools a little more. Schools are great because they do a lot of outreach programs. There are a lot of calls which you can remotely attend. You can connect with people, forums like LinkedIn, etc., former students. If you happen to be in the geography, make a trip to the schools, And when you engage with a consultant, I hope most of them come to the art of applying. I think the breakthrough calls are pretty much the eureka moment, right? Because during the breakthrough call, you really realize that, hey, I was aiming for the moon, but it's more of a reality test. At the same time, it also makes you realize that if I have that buffer of, say, about 2 to 3 months before the application season commences, I can bridge up any gaps, whether it's a test, whether it's a bit more community engagement, whether it's anything which can really pivot my application into the acceptance. So I think it's about as soon as possible engaging with a consultant, doing a lot of research and identifying what the schools are, where you belong, and then making an informed decision.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, for your story. I'm really excited for you, and let's chat for a little bit after this video just to talk about transitioning into school. I'd like to do that if you have a few minutes.
Sure.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, HP.
Okay. All right.
Thanks for watching our video. For more videos just like this, make sure you click subscribe. And if you want to work with us on your graduate school applications, visit us at theartofapplying.com or click on the link below in the description.